This next weave is the least known of all the weaves. It's almost unknown in the UK. In America they know of it and a few use it, but it's still not popular in the US. It is in fact the Pott Weave. Now, the inventor or the deviser of this was a guy called Franz Pott. He was a wig maker, and I believe the era we're looking at is probably the 1930s or 40s, late 30s I think. But no doubt somebody's going to pick me up on that. The method he used in his flies was, if you like, a spin-off from his wig making. He in fact tied his flies using horsehair for the weave, and eventually he devised a very famous range of fishing flies, and they became known as the Mite or the Mighty Mite series, and he probably had a dozen or so patterns. If anybody has any flies of his these days, they're probably worth a small fortune. Now, I'm not going to show you using horsehair. I'm going to use something quite thick and chunky like chenille, fairly heavy chenille. I've got a long shank number 2 in the vise. This has got a bit of a built-up body, but don't worry about this. You can do this weave, unlike other weaves, you can do this weave perfectly on just an ordinary hook shank. Now, one of the things you have to remember is that one of the materials, that's in this case this dark olive, just does complete wraps of the hook shank. It just winds on and on and on. And I'm going to call that the travelling thread or the travelling chenille. The other one goes round the actual travelling chenille, makes a full 360-degree wrap of it. So to start with, you've got to get your two, obviously use 2 different coloured materials, and I've got orange and dark olive. And when you're tying them in, as with all the other weaves, strip off a tying in tag, stick your nail in, get it stripped off, and then tie it in. So to start with, if you keep both quite taut, come round, and every time with the running one, hold it vertical, and then take the weaving one and go round that, like that. Round again, up vertical, and wrap round. Round again, wrap round. Round again. And if you hold that one fairly vertical every time you've made a complete clinch, you should get a nice pattern form up. And what you get is a series of little triangles, little lateral dashes on top of the hook shank, little coloured splashes that form a ridge all the way along the top of the hook. So you just weave away. It's also better if you can bring this, instead of bringing it up here, if you can bring this, the orange one, the weaving one, fairly low, and you see with my fingers here, see these 2 fingers receiving it. So this hand, in my case my left hand, the let's call it the thread winding hand, that's a bit multifunctional in this case. So I'm holding the travelling one with my finger and thumb there, and I've received the weaving one with my last 2 fingers there, and then I take it off and do that. So you can work up a bit of speed, and you can fairly hop along. So you don't need to dawdle, just turn them round and lock down. There's no point in going any further. I'm sure you know by now what I'm doing. So I tie off. And to tie off, I'm just going to hold them back, drop my thread on, just make a thread catch there, bring your thread back, take the running one first of all and tie that down. So once you've tied that down, it traps this one. You can whop the waste off, and then bring that over as though it was part of the next weave and tie that down. That's how you do with a Pott Weave. It's dead simple. I think one of the reasons why it's not particularly popular is I don't think that many people have come up with a pattern that they can utilise this weave with. I think that's its problem. Well, I got to thinking about it one night and I thought, if that woven part, in this case the orange, was on the underside, and instead of using chenille for the weaving part, I used something like herl, in this case ostrich herl, and I used a thinner chenille for the travelling one, and I used a grub hook, I can tie a shrimp. So I almost charged into my den, got a size 12 K4A out, and my first attempt produced this lovely little grey shrimp. I used light grey micro chenille, natural grey ostrich herl, and just some light partridge fibres for the antenna and tails. And when I'd finished it, got it done, whip finish tied off, I got my pliers and I did the usual trick of flattening it laterally. When I took my pliers away, to my amazement, what I saw was little white stripes, little vertical white stripes. And what I'd done, I'd compressed the chenille down so much that I could see the white undercore, the white central core shining vaguely through. So I picked my bottle of hard as nails up and I licked it over with hard as nails to make a hard carapace. And this inner thread core shone at me and I thought, "By, that looks good." So when I let it dry and I give it about 3 or 4 more coats, and I've got this lovely, virtually indestructible little shrimp. And I tied a bigger one then, and that's the 10. Exactly the same technique, exactly the same materials, and that one's actually been in a fish. I just slipped this into my fly box, and I thought, well, what the hell, and I tied it on the point. And first cast, I'm not joking, first cast, it just came slowly onto the dangle and a 3/4 pound brownie picked it up. So I thought to myself, yeah, that's going to work. So this season, these are having a bash. And what I did a few more. I did some in sort of an amber colour for mating shrimps, and I did 1 or 2 olive ones. So it's so easy to tie them with the Pott Weave. I think it's going to become a favourite of mine, is this. And then I got to thinking, well, if I can do the Pott Weave on one edge, it ought to be possible with the same technique to run another weave on the bottom edge. And if I turned it, instead of being a vertical body like that, if I made a flat body, it occurred to me that I might be able to do that most elusive of all freshwater flies, the Hog Louse, the Sow Bug. And I got one. And I was really pleased with this. And that's my first Sow Bug that I did. And that is the fly that we're going to tie now. Oh, I must just tell you, I also had a play about with my favourite pattern, the heptagenid nymph, the flat stone clinger, using ostrich herl and again fine micro chenille, and I've got now a new series of heptagenids, so they're ready for this new season. So okay, let's make a start on this. So what I'm going to do, I'll take this out, off with my thread, get rid of the model, sample, and I'm going to tie this Hog Louse on a size 10 partridge L3B. B designates an up-eye. You know my thoughts on up-eyed hooks and swimming nymphs. If you're going to present a nymph and fish it so that it fishes correctly, that's to say belly down and back up. If you tie it on a down eye hook and put weight on, it'll fish upside down. So in fact, in my opinion, all hooks for nymphs should be up-eyed. So hook in the vise, flatten the barb, and the first thing to do is to lead the shank. Now I'm going to use, on this one, I'm going to use sticky back lead. I cut a strip off that's about 1.5 mm wide, and you've got to have good scissor skill in fly tying, and you've got to be able to cut fairly parallel and narrow. Detach the plastic from the sticky back, like so. Now, obviously, normally you come down with the sticky back lead onto the hook shank. But if you do that, don't forget, I'm going to flatten this. I'm going to build up a sort of an oval shape, and I'm going to flatten it dorsoventrally. I'm going to make a wide platform. So if I build up this shape, and then I come on with thread, I'm going to put a turning moment on it, a torque on it. It's going to break away from its grip. There's not enough grip with sticky back lead. So what I do, I come onto the shank with a touch of super glue, like so, only a streak, and now go down with the lead, shiny side down, metal side down. So I wrap this on, observe the helix angle, just come short of the eye. I can now just tweak off that starting point. And now when I come back, I'm going to shine it down onto sticky. And this makes a really nice solid matrix, and it won't break away. At the end, just put your thumb in there, because you want to build up about 2 or 3 wraps on the spot there. I want to build up quite a lump at the back end. And then I come forward again, just stop short of the last point of return and come back. So I'm building up a little bit of a pointed lozenge, if you like. Come onto there, and then just return that all the way along. So that's the sort of shape you're after. Slightly blunt at this back end and tapering down. That's a bit like a lance head. And now with your pliers, just give that a light dorsoventral pressing. You'll find that because it's sticky side up, your plier jaws will grip it. So what I do, I just get my spider web on, and as soon as it touches, it'll grab because it's a sticky surface. So I just zoom up and down a few times with my spider web, just some angular locks working crisscross. And then when you've done that, you can pick your pliers up and complete the flattening. That's better. And that should give you quite a neat underbody. Don't need to be too wide. Don't need to be too wide, because remember, you're going on with chenille, and that's going to widen it. So the shape you're looking for is like a blunt-ended rowing boat. You know, a rowing boat's square at the end and then tapers down. So the blunt end is where my finger is, and the pointed end is up at the eye. So now you take that out of the vise, because you've a little bit of work to do on your chenille. And I'm using a very dark olive and a lighter one. But I like this dark olive. So take off, well, about 6 or 7 inches. Whatever you do, don't be short, because you don't want to run out. Put it in the jaws, because you want that as a third hand. Get your cigarette lighter. I'm going to reduce this. This, as it is a bit too thick, a bit too bulky. I'm going to deflock that. I'm going to run the lighter up and down. It's the old trick, it's not new. Ever since Brett Smith did his Palomino midge by just coming in like that and tapering one end. This method with chenille has been known, so it's certainly not a new invention. Get your lighter flame on and then just run it up and down like that. A couple of passes, have a look at it, risk another one, and as long as your flame's travelling, you won't go through it. If you stop for a millisecond, it'll go through it. And if I just alter camera, a singed part and an unsinged part, you'll see that I've reduced it by about a third. And then for the tying point, you might as well come to the bit that you've had in the vise. Just stick your nail in and just rip off down to some of the core. So that's going in now. So you pick your hook up, reclamp, thread off the end on the bare shank, get your chenille and tie that in, tie it up at the back of that shaped underbody. Drop the thread onto the body foundation and tie the stripped end down, fold that bit back. I'll just double lock this by tying the tag over so that it can't pull out. That's that tied in. So I'll give that little tug. Yeah, I could pull the vise over with that. Now what I'm going to do when I wind this on, and I'll show you it now before I put the hurl in for clarity. The first 3 turns are going to go on all touching to make the sclerotized rear end. So probably there is going to be touching, and then I'm going to open the chenille out so that I get gaps between each rotation, like that. And if these at the front tend to drop off, I shall nick the lead with my thumb like that to make a little seating groove so that it won't slip off. So that's how my chenille is going to be wound on. So unwind. That's just to illustrate the point. For my weaving medium, I'm using this nice long flued ostrich. The plume you want is a tail plume that gives really long fibres. So these little barbules need to be about 1/4 of an inch long, and you'll only get that from the white tail feather, the big white plumes. So obviously you've got to dye them. So I've dyed these myself just using ordinary dye-lon. So I take off 2 for each side. If you use 1 plume on either side, the legs won't be thick enough. They'll be thin and weak. So you need a good amount of ostrich, and hold them together. Just backstroke the fibres and tie them in on the far side. That's the side away from me. They're in, and lay the tips together. 1 group of 2 on the near side. So just come round, bundle round them and get them in on the near side. So there's my two weaving mediums. Far side legs, near side legs. And then push the butts on top of the body foundation and just tether them down. That's just a bit of extra padding. So just push those bits of flow down out of the way. Bring the tying thread to the front, off the shaped underbody, park it just behind the eye, do a whip finish, pull through, and you can get your thread off. Because I'm now ready to weave. Now remember when we did the example using thick chenille and the big hook? We did that weave along the top of the back. With this one, we're going to have 1 set of weaves down the far side from me, that's the side nearest the camera, and another set on this side. So now come round and take the far side hurls round the chenille, hold them out of the way, come to this side and take these 2 round. Now that's the first wrap of the chenille. Wrap the hurls round, remember the Pott Weave. Come round to this side and round there. Come round and weave again. Take the hurl round, keep tension on. This is the last wrap for the 3 segments that are touching. Keep them snug up to the side of the body. Keep them snug up there. Right, now I can start opening the segments out now. So what I've got three segments all in a row, all touching. So now take that round, place your chenille carefully, round there, push your fibres back, try not to get them trapped, round again, and so you progress along all the time, keeping tension on your chenille. And you can see it's not rocket science, and it's going quite good as this. You can always correct these gaps, these spacings, later with either a bodkin or a dental pick. And I'm nearly home and dry now, look. One more and I'm at the head of the fly. That's the last one on that side. And that's the last one on this side. Voila. That's the tying completed. So now what I've got to do is tie off. Hold everything back, just tap it to the side of the jaws and get me tying thread back on. Catch the tag of my spider web there and make a thread catch behind the eye. Round, 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 round to make a thread lock. And then hold your chenille and drop your thread over. And now you're safe. Tie that down. Bring those hurls forward, tie down. Then bring your near side ones and tie those off with a cross hand wrap. Trim that off. Trim these two off. Mind your thread out of the way. And get your thread out of the way and trim off. And then just drop on there a 2-finger whip. What a fluffy bug. So then I want this thread off. And now what I do, I get an old worn toothbrush, shorten the bristles, and brush now those ostrich herl fibres to left and right, and those at the back, brush those at the back. Do the same on the underside, from the centre outwards left and the centre outwards right. So what I'm doing, I'm using the bristles to just search for any trapped fibres. Just spend a second or two brushing these out. And you should have a complete perimeter of little hurls all the way around. And then any whiskers that are showing out at the front, and there'll be a few, use Big Bertha, but fret the plunger on and off. You don't want to be leaving that glowing at 2000 degrees, just on and off, and just lick away the fibres round the eye. So what I also do now, I just come in with this dental pick, and any of the segments that I've got ostrich herl lying in them, I just pick it out. And I also push the weaves down. You might find a weave, when I'm saying weave, I'm talking about the ostrich herl. You may find one's sort of travelled a bit up the yarn, up the chenille rather. The next job is to go in and exaggerate those gaps between the chenille, because as you've taken the herl round, every time you've taken it round the chenille, then you've spanned across and gone to another one, and then on to another one. In between the chenilles, there's herl going across, and I want to tie that in now to strengthen it. So I get me power silk, and I come in after those 3 segments that are all together, drop it in, and then just separate the fibres out like that, and I just make enough thread turns there to make a thread catch. And then with my brush, toothbrush in my other hand, I spiral forwards now, following the spirals of the chenille. And I brush the fibres out of the way every time I come round to stop them being pulled down by the thread. And just follow that spiral down. And I come along, and you can get on with it fairly fast. Until eventually I arrive out at the head, where again I do a whip finish. That just exaggerates the segments. Don't cut your thread off, just leave it now, because you're going to tie antenna in. What you can do is trim off that waste that you had. Another brush up and look down on them and make sure you've got a nice even perimeter of ostrich herl fibres. So now what I'm going to do is something that may horrify some of you. I get my head cement, this hard as nails, and I lay some on the top there, and I can hear you screaming, "It's gunging all the legs up." That's exactly what I am doing. Put quite a lot on and gunge them all up. Run plenty in. Looks an unholy mess at the moment, but you wait and see. So remember to come with an upward stroke as well. Any that might be trapped underneath or hanging there underneath. And these at the end. Make sure all the hurls I've got some cement on. When I'm happy I've got plenty on, with my finger and thumb, I just stroke these out like that. Do the same at this side. And with this hand I do them little tufts at the back. And then, while the cement is still tacky, I get my dog's flea comb, and that's got about millimetre gaps between the teeth. And I stick the blade in right at the body, press with my finger there to make sure it goes through, and I just drag back. And what that does, it draws all the fibres in, passing through these gaps. Do the same on the other side. But pull through slowly. Slowly, slowly, slowly. And if you get them grouped into little bundles like that, don't go in any more, because you won't hit the same grooves. You'll have to be very careful, and chances are you won't hit the same grooves. And then with your kinking tweezers, while the cement is still moist, go up and just grab hold of each leg at a time and just put a little backward kink into them. Don't write to me or to the company and say, "Where do you get kinking tweezers from?" Because I made these. I made these in our tool room at work before they finally said, "Cheerio, Oliver, we don't want you anymore." So you'll have to either make some, or if you can't make some, just get some long fine nose tweezers. And instead of just pressing, you'll have to press and twist. What you do then, just press with your thumb, and that just pushes them back, and they'll perform, they'll sit like that. Do the other side. It may appear a bit rough around the leg area because you may not have drawn every fibre in. Don't worry about it. It's not my intention to make an exact replica there. I'm not trying to make a model. I'm not trying to even make a realistic. I'm just trying to give a simulation of 7 or 8 legs sticking out on either side. I'm just trying to put a little bit more shape into them by just kinking them back like that. For the tail appendages, I've just got to take a few fibres too many, so I'm just going to take them off there, because I'm after a little forked tail in the centre. So now I've got a couple of nice little forked tail appendages, and those leg ends, what I do is I just go down and just shorten them back. Just take the very the fine tips off. Just take those off. Same on this side. So just trim them to length, and then you should have a nice series, fairly even series of legs all the way down, and they actually look quite good to these. I'm quite pleased with this one. So now on with the antenna. A partridge feather from just back from the neck. Strip off some of the lower fibres, and then with my scissors I just plunge in, take the tip out. You leave a few fibres left in, should leave you if you're lucky, like I've just been with 2 on either side. Now you can put them in curving down or curving up. I'm going to tie it in curving up. So shorten your bobbin, come round, catch the stem down, just nudge it back with a bit of finger and thumb pressure, or you can do this. You can hold that down, drop a thread wrap over there and that one over there, and if you tie them back you'll have to just then bring them forward again. Now they're still stuck onto that bit of stem, so they should be reasonably robust. You can just shape them by thumbnailing them like that. Lift the stem up, snip off the waist. Come round now with 2-finger whip finish. So leg there once they get in on the act. Hold, pull through, pull, 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 snip off my thread. You have a little bit of thread there that looks a bit pale even though it was olive, so I'll just darken this with a marker pen. So just go around any sort of light coloured thread, just go around and just sort it out with your marker pen. And then I'll just run my nail up to curve them. That's a bit of an old trick. You know that trick, don't you, where you run your nail up and put a bit of a curve into your antenna. If the antenna are a little bit pale, stroke these up as well, darken these, make it the same colour as the rest of the fly. And then finally what I do, I get my head cement and I run a bead now on the carapace only. Not the legs, leave the legs alone now. Keep building this up with a few layers, few coats, and I let that dry. So I'll do, let's say I've got 6 of these on the go and I'll have them in polystyrene. So by the time I've done the 6th one, the first one is dryish. Well, it won't be bone hard, but it'll be porridgey, it'll be a bit stodgy. I get my bodkin or dental pick and I just saw backwards and forwards and press down. You can support it with your finger and press in, and what it does, it goes into these grooves between the chenille and makes nice accentuated segmentations. And I leave these, I don't separate these, that's the end, that's where the segments are all buttered together. And there's my nice little forked tail. There it is, quite pleased with that. It's always been a tricky pattern to tie because it's dorsoventrally flattened. But from the point of view of fish food, I know for a fact that on places like Grafham and Rutland, there's certain times of the year when fish feed heavily on these. They form a major part of the bottom fauna. So something like this, on a long leader down there to the bottom in one of these sheltered bays, might work very well. In America, the Sow Bug as they call them, on rivers, I think it's the bighorn. It's one of their all-time favourite patterns on the bighorn. Quite a few patterns over there are tied. Now I reckon one of these on, say, a 14 on the bighorn, I think it might just do the trick. And on small still waters, which are really the most popular still waters that's being fished these days, These are very, very common because a lot of small still waters have got a muddy or a silty substrate, and these fellas love that kind of substrate where there's lots of dead leaves falling in. These are detritivores, these munch up dying vegetation. So the small still water angler, he could do a lot worse than tie some of these. So there you are, that's the Edwards Hog Louse.